Hey, it's me, Nesser, and welcome to the Nesser Show. On the couch with me today is Stevie G, a DJ and radio presenter, well known for his part in promoting hip-hop and R&B music, as well as championing upcoming Irish artists. In this episode, we explore Stevie's first interactions with hip-hop culture, the changes in the Irish music scene from the 90s, and Stevie's encounter with famous artists such as Kanye West. I hope you leave inspired. Hey, it's me, Nesser. Welcome back to another episode of the Nesser Show. Today I have like a top DJ and radio host in Ireland, Cork, you know, the country's capital, as they say. So we have Stevie G on the couch with us today. Thanks for coming through.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
It's actually like really nice to finally talk to you because I feel like I've known you for like, when did I go to UCC? Like 2014.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
it's that long.
And that's because you followed me after I signed for Cork City.
Yeah.
So then that's when I've been like following like everything you've been doing. So it's like it's really amazing to have you here. So I think I'm gonna really enjoy kind of delving into all your experiences and just kind of understanding you as a person and everything you do.
Same here. It's an honor, and you're a top baller as well. So
I'm trying my best.
I'm really happy, and you enjoyed your time in Cork. But I'm not going to do the interview. But you did enjoy your time in Cork.
Look, we won't say too much. Like we had what Saheed here, we had Ghost here, had Hope. You know, so I feel like we're repping Cork enough. Keston will like this one.
Cool.
But yeah, no, Cork is a nice place. But I kind of just want to start as far back as possible as we can go, like more just understanding your childhood, because like, don't think this is a bad thing, but you are probably the oldest person that I've interviewed, right? But more because I actually do find you quite inspirational, but I think for everybody else it would be great to kind of understand your context, because you're probably the most diverse person sitting on this couch, and just understanding how did you become who you are, like where did it all begin for you?
I suppose, I fell into DJing. So there wasn't really a club culture as much when I was a kid. And I was, like, as you say, old enough records were the thing. So it was records, even before, like records and CDs, but it was records for me. So what happened with me is I was just like a typical teenager, finding my way, and my passions were football and music. And it actually, I remember when I was about 12, I was a huge Manchester United fan.
Unfortunately.
And I still am, obviously. But I actually remember, like, some people don't get this till they're 16 or they're 24. And there's even some friends of mine in their 30s and maybe even more that still hang on to that dream. But I remember realizing that, like, I wasn't going to be like the guy who was going to be playing in Old Trafford, even though I did actually score a goal there, but that's another story when I was a kid, when we were in the ground. But so I actually was kind of like, music suddenly took over at around a certain time. Now this is a time when Michael Jackson and whoever was out, so it was like any time, to be honest, if you're a kid and you discover music, it just becomes something that, like, it connects you. And, like, you know, when there's all this stuff in school, like I was in a school, there was like loads of kind of jocks and all that. And even though I was into sport, it wasn't really my kind of vibe, and I didn't feel like I belonged in that kind of zone, even though I liked the sport myself, but I wasn't that kind of jock type, like, you know, hey, come on guys. But music was the time, it actually was the first time I actually felt that I kind of belonged, and I kind of bonded with people that age. And just kind of like, and it was random. It wasn't even hip hop really. That was just kind of emerging. But it was any kind of music, alternative music. It's like the kids today, and a lot of this was stuff that went across generations. So you'll have a kid now who's into Tupac or is into Nirvana, and it could be, or whoever, Paramore, and it could be from any generation. But sometimes it's that alternative thing kind of clicks with a kid. And that was the same with me. It was almost more alternative music, first of all. And obviously the pop music of the day was brilliant because it was Michael Jackson, Prince, Madonna and all that. And then the rap thing happened, which was kind of there when we were there. But it was kind of like there was different scenes in Ireland at the time. Like there was a big graph scene in Cork and beyond. Yeah, always, yeah.
What
underground, like graffiti, subculture. Yeah. And the same with breakdancing. But breakdancing one year was just, it went crazy. Because at the time, like you'd always have different phases. Like it still happens today. It could be like whatever. It could be fidget spinners, or it could be, I don't know, bubble tea. It could be Asian street food.
Just something
There's
is
always
trending.
different. And at the time, I remember the big ones when I was a kid. There was definitely breakdancing. Everyone started breakdancing for a while, except me, because I wasn't a good dancer and I was the guy with the stereo. Exactly. And there was also BMXing, like, and skateboarding. Obviously, these subcultures still. I always consider them almost like almost tiny subcultures of hip hop itself and of the music scene.
But what would have inspired that at the time? Like right now, obviously we know that we have social media, and obviously we have
TV,
and we have immigrants. So what was on TV? Like what's life like?
So MTV was actually played
crazy.
music then. That's how old I am.
Yeah.
So MTV had music then, and it used, for whatever reason, I think it bounced into Cork as a free channel or something. So everyone had it for a while, and Yo MTV Raps was like MTV, despite like. And there was massive battles that went on historically with MTV, that like they wouldn't play Michael Jackson and Prince till they actually had to. So like Rick James had Super Freak, which has now suddenly become a hit again through Nicki Minaj last year. But like there was all these battles to get, we'll say, what they call black music was never really given the platform that it should have. It was Thriller really broke it through, and same with Prince. But hip hop was still, even then, was like they had 1 hour of hip hop a day, or maybe I think it was only a week. Was it? I can't even remember. But Yo MTV Raps was the show, and we got that, and we were kind of young, and it was like this was like nothing else before. There's something about the rebellion side of hip hop, and the swag, and the fact that it talks directly to you as young people. So to this day, like lots of the young people that I work with, which we'll probably talk about in a minute, they have a certain stuff, they like a certain kind of rap that lots of older people don't like. And it was the same when I was then. And it might have been your kind of way of, because we're in Ireland, and it was pretty white obviously at the time.
And that's kind of that's really what's intriguing me, in the sense where we can see the obvious like inspirations now, but at that time you're saying like
it's like Hollywood, like it's like
an hour of MTV Raps a day.
Or whatever it was, I think it was the escape of you're looking into a different world. So everyone knew what reggae was, right? Because Bob Marley mainly. But everyone knew, it was just like Hollywood would have the movies, we'll say, all the kind of mad, crazy adventure movies, or whoever was there. It could be Tom Cruise or Bruce Willis or whatever. And music was almost for me, that was the entertainment, like, the pop stars were larger than life, like the Michael Jackson, like when the video came out, it was like, it's like when Kendrick drops a video now, or when Beyonce drops something, it was the same kind of thing. Everyone was on it. And I think for me personally, it just became extra intensity to it. So as I say, Michael Jackson, Prince, but then when rap came, it was really kind of like, I don't know, there was something more exciting about it. And I wasn't even DJing yet. But I just thought this was like, and the people at the time was Run DMC and De La Soul, A Tribe Called Quest.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, it was just something about it.
It just kind of took over, because it's quite interesting, because like there's always like this subculture of like Irish people who are just, till this day, Tupac, Biggie, Tribe Called Quest, what's the other one?
Wu-Tang, obviously.
Wu-Tang, that people just love, and like I've always been like, where did that love come from? You know, it's really interesting to know.
I think they're larger than life characters, and they're universal. Like that's the thing I would think of as, because at the time I would have been more Biggie than Tupac, we'll say. But even then, because having been there when they first came out, and when they died, was doing a radio show the day Pac died and the day Biggie died. And just having that feeling of like, this is just, we're living it or whatever. I was the same when the kids I was working with, when Pop Smoke died last year, or a couple of years ago, when Juice WRLD died. But the thing is, for me, I would say this much about Tupac, and I've known this over the last 20 years since he's dead. Well, it's not even, it's like, what is it, 25 years or whatever, 96. He's got this Bob Marley thing that he connects with. So, like, people always and this is something that I've always felt really strongly about, the music world and the media has been run mainly by white men, we'll say, right? Now, I'm a white man, but
I can see that.
They've always had this kind of thing about like the Beatles and Elvis and all these white important acts in musical history, and they are, to be honest, all important, like Led Zeppelin, The Who, but they've always kind of elevated the importance of like and I always would say there's no one like Bob. Like you can talk about the Beatles and they're amazing songwriters and producers and everything, and the same with Elvis and everything, but you can go into deepest of Asia and Africa and even South America, and Bob Marley would be more popular than him. And Tupac is one of those guys for the last 20, 25 years that he, for me, is someone like that like, okay, I'm kind of...
Hey, it's me, Nesser. So sorry to stop this episode, but need to take the moment to encourage you to like this episode and subscribe to Culture Shop. Thanks. I don't know what, I was meant to say something when I did that. Guys, just watch it.
I love that New York hip hop and Biggie or whatever, brilliant. And Tribe Called Quest going deeper, and even someone like Kendrick. But Tupac, and it's not just because he's on the shirts of everyone who goes to H&M or whatever.
Resonates a bit different.
He's got that extra something about him that, like, even one, because I was struggling with some of the lyrics stuff. I never was into the negativity around women, like from the start. It's not how I was brought up, and it's not how I represented myself as a DJ. So I always had this kind of, so Tupac could do that. And then 2 seconds later, it's a bit like Snoop. He'll do this kind of like thing praising women,
his mom
like
and
keep your head up
yeah.
or dear mama and all
Exactly.
that. And he's a bit like, he had that extra thing that like you couldn't.
Yeah,
like
he was a star. Like I feel like everybody else at the time was probably more of an artist, but he was a star as well.
And it was honest too. He actually journeyed through some of the stuff. Like I do think he was set up for some of the negativity. But I do think he actually became, especially when he went to prison, I think he kind of really he did what Malcolm X did. He read and he got deeper into it, and he became out then as a kind of a, and it's just a shame that I think, like I always think of when I think of Tupac or Aaliyah and all these people, I think of, imagine another 20 years of what they would have done. Like Biggie,
crazy.
like he was 24, like Pac was like 25, 26, that's too, like, you know what I mean?
Amazing. But like, kind of back to you then, so growing up, having these inspirations, connecting with these artists at the time, when did you decide that this was something that you wanted to do long term? When did that shift happen? Yeah,
so nothing was working in school either, and it was just like, you know, one of these things that like I was a messer and all this stuff was happening. And there was a teacher, one time I did an essay, and it was called Heroes, and I did something about music. And I just started talking about music, and I was just like, whatever, I'm just going to write about what I feel. And he just started going, this is really good. And I was like, what? And he gave me an A. And I was like, geez, I was always getting C's or whatever. And he goes, you should, and it transpired that he was into music himself. So he saw a sort of connection. And it wasn't the music that he liked, it was rap I was talking about. And that really gave me an encouragement to kind of write. So I was writing a lot about music. And I was like, oh, I might become a journalist about music. And I went to UCC. And was studying English and history. There was no journalism course at the time in UCC. So I was kind of planning on doing that, but at the same time then I accidentally fell into DJing by total accident. Didn't even know what it was really for a while. That? And the club scene also happened at the same time. We mentioned before we came on air about Fish Go Deep. So these were guys, now at the time you could be 15 or 16 and get into a club. It's harder now for various reasons or whatever.
Legal reasons.
But at the time it was like, you know, fake ID, happy days. So we knew of this thing because it was mixtape culture. So as I always say, it was social media of the day was a mixtape or a flyer or whatever. So the mixtapes from Sir Henry's had filtered down. So Greg and Shane were Fish Go Deep. They were the main DJs playing house music and even a bit of hip hop. And there was another little back room in Sir Henry's called the Back Bar, where there was this guy called Donkey Man. And he used to play a mixture of dancehall reggae and dub reggae and soul and hip hop. So we kind of, not only was I getting into the music, like transmitting in from MTV or whatever, like, or any little bit I could get. Like if someone was going to America, you'd say, oh, could you get some CDs or records, or someone's going to London or Manchester. But also the mixtapes were coming in. So you were getting like a little kind of like 90 minutes of this is what's happening. So then I always just become obsessed. Like, so, and then again, I didn't think it was for me that I would be, because I couldn't see myself in that realm. And someone asked me then to play at a party because they knew I had all the records. And I was like, I can't do it. Like, what do I do? And they just showed me, it's like, you put on one And then it was a revolution for me that putting on one and being able to put on another one without having to turn it over.
Yeah, like loop it.
So I was like, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
And before I could even mix, now this was. And then I just got the bug. And
that's how simple it was at the time with DJing. You just have a bunch of CDs.
And also, when it was all records, all vinyl.
Not CDs,
and at the same time, someone didn't turn up. The guy, Donkey Man, like this happened within a couple of months. He didn't turn up, and he was sick. And I was around and someone called me and I just got a gig straight away. So I went from trying to get into Sir Henry's for like since I was 15 or 16, hoping that the fake ID would work on a Saturday night, and getting in there and just like, oh my God, because when you're young, people have to remember that like when you get in, you're just happy.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if the worst music's played, you're just happy. You're in there, your friends are there, you're young, everything's ahead of you. And that was the best buzz. But I went from that, being as happy as I could be, to actually DJing there. And then I was like, wow, this is the best thing ever. And the guy paid me, and I remember, forget the first night, paid me like, it was practically nothing, but I was like, you paying me?
Just facing music.
And I just couldn't believe it. And I was actually refusing the money, and he said, look, this is the first time and the last time I'm going to tell you this, never refuse it. So that was a lesson too. That's
great. You basically made it a business then, so you've gone from like
by accidentally
DJing. So what steps did you actually make that into a thing? Because now you have Black on Red with Cork Red FM.
Cork's
you
Red
also
FM,
you also have like the music column sometimes in the evening.
Echo weekly,
in Cork, and then you do other stuff, and you
so there was loads of little pathways that I went on. So first of all, I was still in college. And I said, like, when I finished college, I was like, I might go and pursue that journalism that I was going to do. So I'd done the arts degree. It was open. It was like, just postpone the real world for a while. But I was DJing, and I'll never forget the summer I finished college. I was like, okay, maybe I might go and do another course. But I'd already been writing with some newspapers and some magazines, like Blues and Soul magazine. It's like magazines, like who buys magazines now, really? But like Blues and Soul magazine is still in existence. It's the longest running black music publication in the world musically. So it's from London, and I just tried to blag them. I said, like, guys, like, is there anything going? And they said, oh, just do imports. So I was buying all the imports anyway. So it was like an import at the time. It's not like now where something just gets released, like a flick of a switch on Spotify or whatever, and everyone has it. So it was mostly about advanced copies. And also there was a difference between, say, Japanese market, European market, and the US. So the US imports used to come out in the US before they'd come to the UK and Ireland. And you'd get them, so there was shops that dealt with them. So I used to buy my records in Manchester and Dublin mainly. So I'd have the imports, I'd review them, and then they go into the magazine, and then they get more released in Europe. So you'd have advance. So we'll say when artists like Jill Scott or Lauryn Hill, the Fugees, Alicia Keys, when all of these artists were breaking, they'd break through the import scene first. Erykah Badu is a great example. I remember I had that record for like 6 months before it came out here. So I did that reviews, and you got a lot of connections. But I was still, that was voluntary, like it wasn't a paid thing. Now I was getting paid for the DJing, and then that took off. So I started going to Dublin, Galway, Limerick, and Waterford even. And then the next thing I know, I started doing a couple of days in a record shop, and next thing you know, you're just making a living from it. And like at the time, Ireland was easy.
Not really. Next thing you know, because it's about what, like 20 years since that, like. But
oh no, but at the time it was easy. So we had it so much easier then, because we could be. And this is something I feel really strongly about it, because I was, when you're 17 or 18 then. When you're in college, or 18, 19, 20, and when you leave college at 21, rent was so cheap. And you could actually, even if you did like an hour or two in a bar here, for me that was DJing, but even if you were working in the bar, you could do a couple of shifts, and you could pay your rent and live, or you could be an artist. And that's why now you have to have a real job and try to do your creative stuff on the side, and you still mightn't be able to pay your rent. You might have 2 real jobs. So that's why it's much harder now for people, and that's why I feel sorry for this generation and what has happened to this country. And that's a worldwide thing. But so we also did pirate radio, which again, it's not a thing now because the internet properly, but at the time it was a subculture in the 90s and the 2000s of, it's technically illegal radio, but if you kind of in your own lane, no one bothers. So there was no Red FM
You're not
in Cork.
making too much noise.
Exactly. So that's how we did it. We did it in an apartment, in a flat, tiny little place. Someone had the deck set up, a microphone, a phone, an actual phone, and transmitters that go all around. So it's up in hills, so it bounces all around Cork. And we had Radio Friendly for 4 years. I used to do like shows on it all the time because we started getting the feedback straight away because it was a community. Like the radio wasn't representing our generation, and I work in radio, but it still doesn't represent.
I was going to say, like, a lot of what you're saying, right? We're talking about like about 20 years. Am I right in saying that? In difference, right? Over 20 years in difference. But you mentioned a bunch of things that were. I'm going to say me, not everybody else, but I'm very obsessed in understanding the scenes in Ireland, right? And you said back then there was different scenes in Ireland. You've also said that like music for your generation wasn't played on the radio.
It's the exact same as now.
Like, do you know what I mean? And then it's also saying stuff like hip hop and stuff isn't represented at the time. And it's like, it's really good to get your perspective on things because obviously as somebody in my generation living in my time, we only know what we know, right? So we don't know the steps. Like you've actually made a lot of steps in the sense that you're actually playing this on the radio weekly, if not like multiple times a day, and other places in Ireland, whereas you're explaining.
And there was people before me too, like, so like I'm not actually.
No, but it's like, it's also understanding that journey, right? Because it's like, I want to know what everybody's going through right now. What are the differences and what are the similarities, right? It seems like a lot of the struggles are similar, but whereas you might not make as much money in it right now, but it's definitely easier, right? In the different technology that you have.
Oh, it's cool. No, I mean, the big thing obviously is I produce music, I make music, and I can do something now, and I can play it on the radio and like no, like I'm technically on the radio now because I'm pre-recorded, but like I could literally share something to the world in 2 seconds, and we can do that obviously on social media as well. You can go into the studio. Like back then, it was a physical thing. Even to do something, even a CDR machine, were the worst things, man. Like I come from mixtapes, as I say. So when I was recording my mixes in the 90s, I literally had like my records, my vinyl decks, my mixer, going into either a DAT machine or a tape machine. But a tape machine, like you've seen tapes, man, they roll, they squash. So I could be doing this lit mix in a club, and the thing just rolls up and just dies, and it's not like you can press like it's just gone. Like, so there was that live element that I miss. Now I've got really good recordings from then, but the whole thing about the technology now is just so good. But the big steps we did besides the mixtapes, and I documented a lot of it. So the club scene happened at the same time, and there was a lot of really good things. So it wasn't just about DJs. There was a lot of artists involved. So people used to come in and dress the clubs, like you dress a studio here, and that still happens to this day. People do proper jobs in the club. So there was lots of artists involved and also lots of promotion. But the really cool thing about it, because it was such a subculture at the time, it was just social media wasn't really happening yet, was flyers and that art. That happens that was a beautiful thing about the vinyl as well. Let's face it, the whole covers
and it's coming back as well. It's so
it's absolutely coming back.
Everything just life literally just.
But it brings more people. It brings photographers, designers. It brings other perspectives in, and even the video thing. It's not like the MTV thing isn't here anymore, but people are still using their 3 minutes of a video to put a really good aesthetic across.
Do you find that like artists and creatives right now maybe take our technology and how easy things are for granted?
Maybe, but like I feel sorry for people because I could stand out back then easily because I looked at it as I didn't know what social media was, but I used to actually do my mixtapes. So I did a designer in Cork. His name is James McGrath from Cove. He used to design covers for me, so he's a really good designer. And like most people would just do the mixtapes and whatever, but he used to design the cover. So I looked at it as being this is kind of like an artistic statement. I would properly, and I'd press them up. Now it would cost me money, but you usually make it back. You'd sell them in the record shops, or I'd just give them away as promo. So you're still trying to distribute your vibe. It's not as easy as doing it on Instagram, but the volume wasn't there. So like there was DJs around and there was this and that, but like if you're hungry, as I always say, in your lane, you can, if you've got that extra hunger, you can kind of, but it's very much hard to, like even as a DJ now, like I could get 100 DMs a week saying, oh, here's my new track or whatever. So it's trying to keep the volume. I know that music as a commodity is pretty much free. Like you can technically listen to music without ever having to pay for it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's undervalued a lot of things. So people don't have the same. Whereas if you do end up paying like whatever it was, €8 or €9, whatever it was, even pounds at the time,
You
for
almost
records.
cherish it, like.
Yeah, so, and that's why if you do buy one, you know, it's going to be, you have a different relationship with it. So art, but it'll always come around. Like everything always comes around, like from way before my generation and way after. I think things will come around. And I even see that with like my daughter, like she's 13, and even the music she's listening to, like she was listening to, I actually wrote about it recently, because when Miguel came out first, he was like seen as an underground kind of like soul artist. And I was like, how come this isn't like bigger? Like when Adorn and Short Thing came out, and then she was like, listen, I was like, Short Thing became big on TikTok.
On TikTok, yeah.
And it became a global hit now, like 12 years on. And even Miguel said it, like, man, this is such a blessing. Like, this is like,
a lot of songs have like taken up, like have blown up after their time. But it's kind of like, it brings that like unstable, unpredictable side to music.
Absolutely. So it's hard when you're trying to pay your bills and you're trying to depend, you're investing in videos and music, and artists, a lot of them have had to quit and they haven't made it. And some of them, like artists, and this is a historic thing, there's loads of artists, like there's a whole scene called Northern Soul in Britain, which celebrated American obscure black music that never really became big at the time of Motown, we'll say in the 60s. So there was all these brilliant like artists that we all know, like Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder. There was so many of them that loads of them didn't kind of like work. And they recorded the music and it didn't really get the promo from Motown or whoever, but the music was still there, and it eventually became found. So loads of the artists are dead now, and it's blown up. And this still happens with music. I don't know, there's documentaries about Sugar Man and people like that. There's artists like even Sharon Jones, who I got a chance to interview. She had the Dap Kings, so she's a soul art, like almost like an Aretha Franklin of her day. She only died a couple of years ago of cancer, but she didn't blow up till she was about maybe 50. And her group were the group who backed Amy Winehouse.
Yeah.
No, it's typical the way it kind of works in the music industry, is like it took a white woman to break that.
Of course.
But, and again, no disrespect to, like, because Amy Winehouse is one of the best voices of any generation, black or white, so there's no problem with Amy. But Sharon Jones had recorded loads of stuff with them, the Dap Kings, but they eventually kind of got the roundabout, they eventually finally got the success.
That way, yeah.
And she got a few years of it before she died, but it's amazing that there's millions of artists in Ireland who've recorded, probably, who record right now, and they'll never get because it's such it's a big thing, it's a saturated thing, and obviously you will find you eventually might have to go and just like pay the bills by trying to do a regular job.
Yeah.
So it's hard.
Yeah. Before we touch on the Irish music scene and Irish artists, so you've mentioned like a lot of like really big names from like the 80s and like early 90s.
Yeah.
Right. You've also DJ'd and opened for a lot of these people. Like, which was your favorite person to work with? We mentioned your experience with Kanye West earlier. Who's been your favorite celebrity artist to work with?
Well, I DJ'd before Destiny's Child, so that was a dream. Okay. And that was just when they were popping first. So it was John Reynolds he used to do clubs everywhere, like Waterford. He set up the Electric Picnic, so he asked me to do it. And it was in Dalymount Park, but they moved it to the 3 Arena, which was called the Point Depot at the time. So I DJ'd before them, and Eve was on the bill. Eve, like Let Me Blow Your Mind, and Damage. And there was some UK garage as well. So like Beyonce, like being right next to her while she was on stage, and she was dancing in heels, and she was about 18 or 19, and you could even tell that like the rest of the girls are like Kelly Rowland, and like even her alone, and Michelle Williams. So it was just when they went as a trio, it was a Survivor tour. So we had Kanye. He was actually we did some shows with him. Snoop, 50 Cent. The best was probably like Beyonce is still someone I really like respect a lot, and Kanye. Obviously, there's issues, but he was super cool to me, and I really liked the way he, as a performer, he was he came to Cork 3 times, and there were always different shows.
Yeah.
And he even came to our club. That's where we met him, and we put him on. So he did a surprise appearance. He was with Kid Cudi. Who else? There's loads of the greats like.
You've met like De La Soul as well.
De La Soul, we did a load of shows with them. So people like that who aren't as known as, but they were as important as anyone. It'd be, I don't know how you'd say it to like a youngster now, but like people like De La Soul, A Tribe Called Quest, but we had De La Soul, Public Enemy, Grandmaster Flash, Roy Ayers, Lonnie Liston Smith, lots of people who wouldn't be household names, like Roy Ayers, Marlena Shaw. Like people wouldn't know her now, but she in black music, she is like, and she's like, I was lucky to, some of them are gone now, like Lonnie Liston Smith, he's still around. But there was people like, how do I say it? Like, if there was no Lonnie Liston Smith or Marlena Shaw or Roy Ayers, there would be no Jay-Z or Pharrell or Mary J. Blige.
Because they sampled all their music, essentially.
So we had a lot of them, and like even the Lonnie Liston Smith gig, there was like 20 people at it. And I remember going up to, because I was interviewing him like what we're doing now for the radio show, and I remember just being like, oh man, I'm so sorry, like I'm so embarrassed for Cork that like people don't. And he's mad.
Did people show up for Kanye and Destiny Child then?
Yeah.
Okay.
But like Destiny Child was like a million people, or how many it was full. But like I was like, for these guys, and he was like, look man, I've been around, like you know, I started doing these gigs to 10 people wherever it was 50 years ago in wherever he's from. So and I always like the show business that you always get from these people, that like the guys or the girls who've come up, like they're still appreciated, that like he was happy that even one person was there. That was cool. So I always thought that was a value.
Who's your worst experience?
I don't know, like I've had a couple of interesting ones. I remember doing like, it's so cool doing a face-to-face interview. So, because I'm on radio. Yeah. So I remember interviewing Janelle Monáe, and I worship Janelle Monáe. Did some gigs with her. She signed all my records. She was super cool. But I remember the first time I met her, we just had a miscommunication on an interview. And it wasn't even that bad, but for whatever reason, she'd been around for years, like with Outkast and all that. Like Janelle Monáe's put in work, like people don't even know it. Like 20 years in the game, we'll say. And I was on the phone, it was just so awkward. And she was like, and my show was still going on the phone, so I'm pre-recording and I'm nervous in case my other show is going out and I can't hear it or if something happens. And I started off by saying, look, people are saying it's like an overnight, because she was really popping at the time. All the media were going, and it was about, she's got the aesthetic too. She's beautiful and she's always really dynamic with a fashion sense and everything, which she still is. And I remember sort of saying to her, it's the first question, and I made this mistake of trying to you're trying to show the person that you know loads about them, that you're not just a typical person interviewing them. And I was saying, like, people think you're like an overnight success, but like, you've put in the work, and I've always known that you've been whatever. I just said something stupid like that. And she was like, I'm not an overnight success. That was my point, like, that she wasn't, that I'd known her career.
But all she heard was overnight success.
Oh man, so she was just a bit like, kind of like, and then I think halfway through it, she was going on a big kind of rant, and I think halfway through it, she kind of clicked, and then she just became super nice again, and then, so it was cool, but it was just a bit of an awkward moment. But you just get to, but that's why the impersonal thing, I mean, we live in a life of Zoom now, and you can even do something more in Zoom because you're face to face, but like phone interviews, it's just like,
it's hard to know when to kind of cue in. I mean, that's something that I'll learn anyway. So
no, you're natural.
I'm never gonna pretend that I know too much about anybody. Yeah. So Drake, come true.
Yeah. No, you're good. You're good.
But talking about Ireland then and bringing it, like, did they ever express their feelings towards Ireland? Because
everyone likes Ireland, I think, like the visitors.
Yeah, because like for me, what I find sometimes is that like we have a lot of artists coming from the UK, right? And since I've started getting involved in the scene a little bit, I've seen the difference between artists who actually connect with promoters here and connect with artists here, right? Versus the artists who connect with a big like promoter, events promoter, don't open for anybody, and then have like no one in their show because people in the music scene or whatever don't even know they're coming. Like, there's actually been 2 examples recently that have cancelled their concerts, and I know for a fact that it's because they didn't have the numbers, but also their target audience didn't know they were coming, right?
I think it's a big thing. First of all, we always had, so we built a club scene, we'll say, in the 90s. It was based on the residents, right? So I come from a scene where you were the most important person, the DJ, whoever was putting it together. And I still feel strongly about that. That like, so Dublin, the R&B scene in Dublin, people don't really realise it, but it was way behind. We'll say Cork we were leading the hip hop and R&B and house music. Waterford was up there as well, actually, especially with house music and techno. But in Dublin, it was a couple of steps behind, and they became, when they developed the R&B and hip hop scene, the MTV Awards were here in the late 90s, everyone suddenly went to R&B. So they were literally ringing me going like, will you play? I was playing like 2 or 3 nights a week in Dublin, but the whole scene became guest driven, and it became about the acts and the other DJs from the UK. And if it's DJs or if it's acts from abroad, first of all, people love Ireland, right? People love Cork, people love Waterford, Limerick, Galway, Dublin, Belfast. People here are just, we vibe out, right? And this is any kind of people, any of us, whether they're from African origin,
Any
whether
group
they're
of
from,
Irish people
we are Irish.
love a bit of party.
People love it. But the problem is, so we used to always have, when we did get guests down in Cork, we'd try to get them in, maybe meet them for a drink or go for dinner, and people might even hopefully stay, because if it was a Saturday, they might stay for the Sunday and go back on Monday. It was even cheaper, and just vibe out and people get to know it. But like, things became a bit more impersonal as the years went on with artists. So you still have artists. I don't know how many artists, and I used to really find a problem with it, that there was artists that we were paying a fortune, mainly Americans, right, in the hip hop scene particularly, many rappers who come in, and they'd be like, they'd always whisper to me as a DJ. So they'd be on stage and everyone's like giving them all the love, and he'd come up and go, hey man, what city am I in again? Like, doesn't even know where it is. And I'm like, it's Cork. And they're like, hey, 2 seconds later, hey, we were in Dublin last night. Dublin sucks. Cork is much better, and everyone's loving it. Or if they're in Dublin, we were in London last night. London sucks. So people were just going through the same motions and the same cliches and the same, not really. No, like,
really
imagine not even know what city you're in, right?
Yeah, like,
because life moves fast.
A lot of them don't know what to do here.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a disconnect between like the media in Ireland and these people, because I don't think that the media here connects these people to their fan base enough for them to actually appreciate Ireland. Because I feel like if these people knew that people here actually cared about them, they would care the same way. Whereas, like, for example, Diddy went to London and he had to hit up gigs. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, if we champion our own artists, like, if somebody's coming, how okay, so someone from the UK comes to Dublin, like, who are they checking for? Do they even know what's going on in our scene here? Do they know who to kind of give credit to or try to have open for them and things
I agree.
like that, you know?
Like, if you put in the work, right, the artists that, like, Afrobeats is probably the most kind of style of music that I play to this day, like in the last 6-7 years. And like, if you look at all the artists who've connected worldwide, like Yemi or Wizkid or Burna Boy, like all the work they're putting in with local, now it's an African diaspora worldwide, first of all. And even in the America now with the Bad Bunny and all the South American artists, or the people from that kind of, that's gone, these people have made connections with, they haven't just turned up, right? And even someone like even Kanye and Diddy connecting with, like that's why they make connections with like the Skeptas and the Gigs and all these people. And it's like, there's a way of doing it that, like, it's a grassroots situation of, like, for me, when I was younger, it used to be, you go to a city, you go to a record shop, find out what's happening, meet the people, you go to the clubs, and you kind of, like, if people are just literally, like, if someone's whispering in my ear going, like, where am I? I'm like, man, come on, like, you've been here for 6 hours, you could at least know
like, look at a
where you are.
signpost or something.
And it's the relationship where there's still and also, because we were Cork, so we weren't Dublin, right? So Dublin would have been seen as bigger. So you're like, oh man, we're in Cork. These guys are only going to know like 5 hip hop records. So people would have this kind of prejudice. And then in Dublin, they look at Dublin and go, Dublin, like, it's not London. And they're looking at London as it's not New York. So people have this kind of, like, artists have their own thing. And sometimes they go down to festivals. The festival could be like 200 miles away and they're still like, hey, Dublin. And like, I see it to this day, but I think any artists that, like, there's other artists, and I've seen a million of them, and some of these people are big, like, they'll make the connection and they'll connect with the people and build a relationship. And it's just like your fan base or whatever. Like, people are doing this now. There's ways of people, like, there's ways of connecting with the people who are, because, like, I always say that like, whether it's a football match or whether it's a gig or anything, that, like, even people ask, like, DJs, some of them hate requests. I'm like, you are there to, you're
accommodate to people,
yeah, like,
but
you're entertaining them.
I do think the culture has changed a lot, and,
I know,
and that
big
has
time.
a big thing to do with it.
But it's more impersonal, I think, but there is more of a direct way of, and I can see why artists are trying to protect themselves, but, like,
because fans are crazy.
Like Stormzy, for example, listen, he's not like one of my favorite artists, but, like, I know all these kids went to Stormzy in 3 Arena, like, and he was down, like, taking photos and meeting them, and he connects with, it's a bit like that Pac, Bob Marley thing I said earlier. Like, I know all these people, like, my age are kids, and they're like, oh, have you heard this guy Stormzy? And I'm like, they know Stormzy. They wouldn't know who Skepta is, they wouldn't know Wiley, they wouldn't know Giggs, they wouldn't know
And
Central C.
I'm pretty sure that's why Wiley was mad.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I like Wiley though.
Yeah, do you like a bit of Wiley?
Wiley's
But
a legend.
as somebody who's obviously done your bit and doing the DJ in your own career, now you're almost trying to pass on the baton and help produce and make music with the likes of like J Ronic, DJ Safari, like Minnie Marley. Talk to me about what the work that you're doing with these artists in Cork.
Well, the important thing, first of all, if you come from, especially if you're a white person in a music scene that was. And again, some people have a problem with that. Like when I called my show Black on Red all those years ago, it was black music on Red FM. People had a kind of thing, not so much then, but over the years, one or two people like, black music, that's race. And I'm like, it's black music. Like, so white people have always been involved in it. Like Rick Rubin, this guy with a beard, big white dude who's involved with the Beastie Boys. There was other people involved. Like Eminem is pretty well known as a white person involved in black music. But you pay respect to where it came from. Same with Elvis. He kind of, it was a kind of one of those things, like I said with Amy Winehouse, sometimes, and Adele and all these people are bringing this black music to the world, and sometimes it's sort of sad that it has to be these people rather than sometimes the originators who get to kind of, how do I say it, like Macklemore won a Grammy ahead of Kendrick Lamar. Like, how did that happen, right?
Yeah.
So, but if you're from something that comes from, so if you learn through hip hop, is what I learned through the history. So it's Nina Simone, Billie Holiday, it's Miles Davis, John Coltrane, it's the blues, it's reggae, it's soul, it's everything. If you come from that, you always have to pay respect. So I always try to pay the respect to where it came from, and that goes the other way then. So I try to educate, because I got everything from this as music. So I'm literally a DJ mainly, playing other people's music. I'm not rapping, like I'm not singing. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm just a vehicle. And if you get all this from this beautiful music culture, which has given me everything, you obviously have to just pass that on and give it to other people. So the young people particularly, that's when it's just a natural thing of like, someone asks you a record or what's that? And I'm just like especially when Shazam wasn't around, you're like, oh, this is that. And you seen, so I was working in a record shop, you could see the grassroots of like, you can see people getting into the culture, you can help them. And so now I do that for a living as a music teacher and producer and stuff, and it's the best buzz. But like, I'm just so lucky that anything I've learned that I can just pass on.
Yeah. So how is your relationship then with the artists that are coming through? Like, for example, you travel around with Minnie Marley. So what would your role be in her kind of career?
So all the artists, whether it was most of the Irish artists that have a relationship with through, if it could be a cello or an officer or an Alicia Ray it's just a way, like I'm lucky I'm in the media and I'm a DJ, so you do events and you interview people and you break the music and you write about them. So obviously I've been a bit sort of disappointed in Cork that like we had that scene, and I told you 20 years ago we were kind of leading the way, especially in the DJ scene, but like it's not like that anymore.
Even when I was living down there, because there was ground floor, and even the likes of like Hope and Rafa and all of them, like, and even before I even knew anything about Dublin, like I do know that was there, but it doesn't seem like that's the case anymore.
Yeah, like Cork is not leading the way, like, so I'm sorry.
Sorry, Keston.
That disappointing. No, Keston is one of the guys. In fairness, like he just puts it in, man, and there's people there. So when I say it's not leading the way, there's still brilliant people there. So there's Keston and there's Minnie and there's tons of other people. But like we as artists, I don't think we've had enough, we'll say. Now, in fairness, Keston, Salome, we're going to take as a Cork person, right? So he's kind of a nomad.
No man's land, so he is.
He's a nomad, but we're going to take him. And there's artists that I'm working with. There's Abby Lee, there's King Coco, there's Alicia, she's another artist breaking through. There's Diamond, who are brilliant, just saw them for the first time. So there's brilliant artists, but like I have to say the infrastructure in Dublin and Belfast and places, and Limerick is smaller than Cork, but like you see what happened in Limerick with Denise and with God Knows and Merle and all the other, like there's more alternative, like Strange Boy, and there's all loads of brilliant artists from across the genres, not just hip hop. So Cork, I think, has been, now we've brilliant young people involved all through the years, but sometimes there's a bit, I don't know, it happens in some towns that, first of all, a lot of the people working in the hip hop scene in Ireland, whether in Cork, whether there were break dancers or graph, and lots of the kids we had, we'll say 20 years ago, to go into the youth clubs, I am proud to say that lots of them work in the arts still. So some of them were break dancers then, and you eventually kind of the bones start going, and some of them are artists, like visual artists, some of them are street artists, some of them are working in the media, some of them are working in radio, TV, some of them are working in tech, some of them, but lots of them are working, so it's kind of cool in that regard. So for me, it's a natural thing of you're trying to push your own, you know what I mean? No, I always have this strong feeling of, I try to measure an Irish artist, whether it's Sweet Lemon Day or Jaffa or whoever. If I get that, I'm not going just pushing all my Kendricks or my whoever SZAs aside and going, oh, just to play, like, because some people go on this Irish thing all the time and they're like, it has to be Irish, has to be Irish. And I'm like, there's a way of balancing it. So we're trying to, I remember the first time I ever started producing music in the studio, I was kind of going, like, it was with Fish Go Deep. And we would, at the time, we would listen to whoever was out at the time, it was a Tribe Called Quest or Jay Dilla, and we'd listen to that, and then we'd listen to ours and go, oh man, our beats aren't that good. So you're trying to measure against, and that's the cool thing that's happening in Ireland overall, that we're trying to, so if I look at Sweet Lemon Day or Alicia Ray or Tommy K or
anybody really,
if I look, and I'm like, wow, like, so what's the difference here? There's not much. It's marketing. And now there's that's even changing, because you've got like someone
Salo,
I grew up with,
like Travis and Al,
exactly,
charting and everything.
exactly, the right names you mentioned, because even, and someone who's involved in that, like Scylla, who I grew up with in Cork, even though she was in the north, she's the VP of Warner's now, and there's all the stuff that Solomon has done with Trusted, and there's stuff, there's collabs between the major labels, so there's stuff behind Cello. There's stuff behind, even Diffusion have got some kind of, I don't know, just big partnerships, and things are moving. And like, because I remember when Hot Press weren't like putting, like, all of the artists have been on, like JLOL, they've all been on, like, a lot of them are getting coverage now, they're getting the festivals. And like, for better or for worse, some of it I'm cynical about, for better or for worse, since June 2020, people are kind of realizing that, oh my God, how white is this? Like, in the media and everywhere else, there's black faces. There's people being suddenly late, and all these shows are interviewing. Now, sometimes I'm not always impressed, because they were putting Denise out there, and all they were talking about was the race issue.
Racism,
and I'm like, do you ever
is
talk about our music?
Is that the worst part? So when you say for better or for worse, what's the worst
No,
part?
like, I'm like, so I would have seen these people growing up as, some of them as kids, like even God knows, in my teenage discos was his first ever gig when he was 15 or whatever. And I'm like, you sitting, God knows, down in the or well, it was more Denise or Erica or whatever. No, these are the people who are outspoken and really well able to talk about the issues of after George Floyd, and people had to talk, and suddenly Irish media is like, oh, let's get some black faces on, because let's get them on the Sunday Times, let's get them. But like, someone like Denise has been interviewed, and all they're talking about is her, like, they're not talking about her music or anything. And I'm like,
experience.
Guys, you don't, like, just because she's a black woman, it doesn't mean that this isn't her, like, you're not going to just interview Hosea and just talk about he's quite good on all of that stuff as well. But you see my point. So I just get a bit like, it's almost like there's a lot of box ticking going on. And I've even friends of mine who are black and are fitting into some things, and they're suddenly getting overwhelmed with people suddenly calling their phone, and they're even kind of going like, is this for the right reasons here? Like, but at the same time, overall, I think it's finally good that we finally have people getting on the magazine covers, getting the radio play, people are talking about, because like, we have the artists.
The quality is definitely getting bigger.
And the guys, I just want to quickly say that the people who've probably got the most success aren't the ones necessarily on the Sunday Times or being interviewed. Like, you don't really hear A92 being interviewed by Ryan Tuberty.
I don't think that they would be put on Ryan Tuberty, though. That's the thing.
But these people have done it outside of their own realm, and they've done it through grassroots of if they're not on RT or Red FM, whatever, even though they were on Red FM on my show, they would, who cares? We'd set up our own, so these people, drill and stuff came through its own YouTube channels.
Yeah. Slight motive, big up, bounce.
Yeah, so I gotta say respect to all of the, because this is so cool for me that like people and young people will always, if they're not being, we did it in the 90s when we weren't on radio, you set up pirate radio. People do it now, it's like you're not on like whatever, Facebook and whatever, it's TikTok or it's Snapchat or whatever it was, pop and be real. You always have something that's your own, and people have done this, and this is how drill is blown up in the UK and Ireland in such a way, and it's the same with like my big passion again, especially with Afrobeats, is like I really want to see, now it's happening a little bit, but like I really want to see, and sometimes it takes a generation or two, so there's a girl now who's listening to Thames who's going to be like the Irish Thames.
Yeah.
Now there's a couple of them are even established.
People will just be inspired by them.
So it's so cool that, and that's what I'm really like looking forward to.
Yeah.
So it's like looking to 10 years ahead or 15 years ahead.
Yeah. Stevie, like, it's been amazing speaking to you, and we're not done just yet, right?
Yeah.
You've had a really full life, and from you getting inspired to doing it yourself, being driven, to now inspiring other people, is there like anything in your life that you feel like you've missed out on?
Oh man, like so many, but like I always try to, do you know that glass half full thing?
Yeah.
So I have so much writing and so much music that I want to release. I'm lucky I'm doing it with the kids at the moment, but there's so much stuff that I want to get out there. There's so many gigs I want to do. I still feel it's this, the club scene is gone so kind of like I don't think I've even DJed properly in Dublin at a like brand corporate event for maybe a couple of years. Like I can do the festivals, but like even then it's like I want 3 or 4 hours, you know what I mean? I want to play, I want to do it all, and like you can do a little bit of it in the streaming and stuff, but it's like it's 2 people right in front of them. So I want to do like, I love a good club residency again, where I can just play like I really, like that's what I am as a DJ. I want to get more music out. I'm doing a hip hop documentary of the 50 years of hip hop history, which is pretty much nearly done, but it's all I wrote it, but it's all voiced by kids.
Yeah.
So there's about 30 kids from, some of them are my kids, some of them are like relations, some of them are kids I work with in direct provision, or people from all different migrant communities, to people from all different, we'll say, marginalised communities in Ireland, whether they're traveller groups or anything. So it's brilliant here, these people's voices. But there's tons, so I'm only getting started anyway.
That's amazing. I really, really love to hear that, like, because you are, like I said, you inspire me, and I'm sure you've inspired so many artists. Like, a lot of people I know, probably one of their first times being played was on your radio show. And as somebody who's always there for other people, I just want to take this opportunity to give you your flowers verbally.
Thanks a lot.
But also physically.
Oh, wow.
Here you go.
Every day is Valentine's Day.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God. I don't think I've ever got flowers before.
Really? Well, there you go. It's literally just a way to appreciate you. It's only,
thanks a million.
It's only flowers, but...
I got the flowers. Wow. Thanks so much.
No worries.
I'm going to be going back to Cork, like, pimped out with the flowers. Man.
Exactly.
Thanks so much.
Best of luck with all of your future endeavors and everything
you.
else that you have coming up. Like, I can't wait to see how you continue to work with artists that are coming up and the things that you do yourself. I'm really interested to hear about this documentary.
It's going to be cool, and there's so much other stuff as well. As I say, there's like, I didn't mean to be too disparaging about Cork, because we've got really good artists, but there's a next generation coming through. And the same with the, like, everything is building. Like 5-10 years ago, if you told me that like all of the artists that we've all mentioned from Dublin and around the country are at a certain place now, like I would have just been like, and like it's all like,
so it's positive, and we have something to look forward to, which is amazing.
It's great, and it's great to have you to be interviewed by you as well, like a top baller.
I'm trying my best.
I don't mind that side of the shirt. Maybe don't like the first side.
Yeah, probably not. We'll keep that. If it's red, so just pretend it's United on the front.
Yeah, exactly.
So guys, if you watched,
no
worries. If you stayed this long, make sure to like, share, subscribe. All of mine and Stevie G's information will be in the description. See you guys later.